Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you to everyone for attending this Governance Committee meeting Wednesday, the 19th of March 2025. My name is Councillor Alan Platt and I'm chair of this committee. Councillor Mark Clifford is my vice chair. Members are reminded that the meeting is being recorded and will be accessible on the sorry, I just got a message coming on. Members are reminded that the meeting is being recorded and will be accessible on the Council's YouTube page. If you wish to speak at any stage, please indicate to me you wish to do so. When I invite you to speak, please turn on your microphone and turn it off when you finish speaking. Please speak clearly and do not cover your mouth when speaking to make it easier for any lip readers to understand you. Can everyone ensure their phones are turned to silent? We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, please exit the way you came in and congregate in St Thomas's Square next to the police station. Before we start, I'd just like to welcome Craig Ainsworth, who is observing via Teams. Craig will be starting as the committee's new independent member in May. We look forward to meeting you in person, Craig. We'll now begin the meeting. Apologies for absence. From what I can gather, we have none. Oh, sorry, no, we do.
Can I give apologies for Councillor Snow, please?
Yeah, just in addition to that, Councillor Moss and Councillor, mine's gone blank, Sam Martin, yeah, with Councillor Beach and Councillor Green substituting.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of any matters contained in this agenda. Any of the members have any interest to declare? Nope. Right. Item 3, minutes of the meeting, Wednesday the 22nd of January 2025, pages 3 to 6 in your papers. The minutes of the last meeting are included in the agenda. Are there any comments or points of accuracy to raise? Sorry, Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, move them. For me, they're a very accurate record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Second them.
All in favour? Yep. Item 4, minutes of the Constitution Working Group meeting of Monday the 24th of February 2025. The minutes of the working group are included for information and noting. Would anybody like to make any comments?
Noted.
Thank you, Councillor Whitton. Item 5 is the Internal Audit Plan, April to September 2025, pages 11 to 18 on your meeting papers. Chris Walmsley, the Head of Street Scene and Waste, has attended the meeting to answer any queries in relation to the fuel management review, which I think was on the last meeting agenda, and Chris was unfortunately unable to attend. I'll hand over to the members to see whether they have any questions for Chris. Councillor Green.
Hi, Chris. So the question, the last one was in terms of risk assessments and just in terms of just confirming that you've got all the various risk assessments in terms of managing any sort of hazardous materials regarding around the waste management side of things. That was the last point I made at the last meeting, just to confirm that you had those all in place.
Yeah, we do have some robust risk assessments in place. We've been doing a lot of work around the cost assessments, which was identified as a little bit of a gap, but all that's in place now. So, yeah, got no issues.
Anything else for Chris? Well, Chris, that's short and sweet. Right, the Internal Audit Plan. Go back to that one, and Dawn is going to present that for us.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this is, the report sets out the work that will be undertaken by the Internal Audit team for the period between April and September 25. So this is a usual report that we bring to the committee every 6 months. And we've gone through our usual risk assessment and consultation with directors, and we've agreed the plan with the senior management team before it comes here for final approval. So the plan's attached at Appendix A, and you can see clearly that we've highlighted the links as well between the work that we do, the corporate objectives and the risks to those objectives as well. As we did in previous years, we are providing Chorley Leisure Limited with 75 audit days. And whilst the outcome of our work, individual engagements, do not come to this committee, in the final annual report and opinion, we will set out our view and opinion of the leisure company in that report. As we do normally, the audit resource, we provide details of that for the forthcoming year. We have had a bit of instability last year with the retirement of one of our auditors, but that's now stabilised. We're now back to a full complement within the team. One of our trainees is due to take their final exam Saturday, so we're keeping our fingers crossed that they can then progress to the auditor role. We're not proposing any changes to our performance indicators for the forthcoming year. One change we are proposing, though, is we are changing the audit assurance ratings that we provide when we complete every engagement. We give it an assurance rating, and the current ratings that we use are set out in the report under paragraph 18. We benchmarked with other local authorities, and we also took into account work done by SITFA, a special interest group, and they've set out benefits to standardising the approach across various authorities. And they recommend, it's not mandatory, but they recommend the use of the 4 assurance ratings that are set out under paragraph 20. So it's been agreed with the corporate governance group, the officer group, that we will adopt those from April onwards. We've also provided in this report just an update on the implementation of agreed actions from reports with limited assurance. And as you can see from the table, 60 of the 84 actions have been implemented. A further 10 are in progress. So that's a positive picture, because 14 are still yet not due. So we're in a good place with those, and I'm confident that the remaining 10 will be implemented within a reasonable time frame. So as I said, the plan is attached to Appendix A, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Dawn. Members of the committee, any questions for Dawn? Councillor Hayden.
Questions, Dawn, but I thought it was well set out and it was very easy to follow and thorough and fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hayden. Well, you got off lightly there. If there are no further questions or observations for Dawn, can I propose that we move to a vote on approving the internal audit plan? Thank you. All in favour? Good. Excellent. Item 6, the global internal audit standards in the UK public sector. This item is for us to consider and note the report, and Jackie is going to present this item.
So this report provides you details with the new global internal audit standards and also details of the application note. That's in relation to how we apply the standards within the UK public sector. And SITFA has recently released their code of practice as well for governance of internal audit. So again, gives you a bit more background about the things that maybe are a bit more difficult to apply on a global level and made it more in tune with how we operate within the public sector. So we've provided you with a copy of the code for some reading, and we've also provided you with a schedule of the changes that we'll be looking to undertake over the coming year. We've aligned this with our audit plan, and so the natural progression of the documentation that we will be using internally and bringing to yourselves, and aligned it with the schedule of governance committee meetings as well. So this will take effect on the 1st of April, so it's imminent, and the main changes with the new standards is these 5 domains. So each domain gives you a separate element of the function, and these domains are further separated into principles which we have to demonstrate compliance with. So by the end of the year, this time next year, when we come and we assess the effectiveness of the Internal Audit Service, we'll be coming to you to demonstrate that we have complied with all these new requirements of the code. So, as advised, Appendix B gives you a little bit of an idea of what documents will be coming to you and when to expect that, and where that aligns with these new principles. So that I'm happy to take any questions if you have any.
Thanks, Jackie. Any questions? Councillor Hayden.
We were having a discussion before you came in about the new arrangements, and I just wanted to make sure that as a member of the governance committee that I will be able to recognise from what's presented to me, that I will be able to be assured that the process is covered and it's working and it's being reported properly. Didn't know whether we would need any extra learning and development for that, but Chris thinks we'll probably be able to just soak it up as we're going along, and all will become clear. So, because I know it's not, you don't have to comply by the 1st of April, it comes in, but you've got a full year, haven't you, to prepare all this. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to also prepare with you, really, to make sure that we're still
I think a lot of the documents will be
governance.
familiar. They'll be familiar, so you'll have the charter, which you should be used to seeing. We've got the strategy, which will be a new document, but when we bring each new piece to committee, we'll provide you a bit of background and maybe relate it back to the particular principle that it relates to, and make it clear what we need to be doing and what you need to be aware of for everything that we bring.
Thank you, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jackie. Any more questions? Any more points? Any more observations? Questions? Just one from me with regard to my usual bandwagon of resources. Are you happy with the resources available to you to carry out all this?
Yeah, currently we are. Yeah, we've done a lot of pre-work with our own internal paperwork and processes. So from the 1st of April, our working papers and everything that we use to conduct audits is where it should be. And I think with how we've set out the schedule, yeah, I don't foresee any problems from a resource point of view.
Thanks, Jackie. Well, it's now a matter of record. That item was for the committee to consider and just note. So no more questions. We'll move on to the next item. Item 7. The annual review of risk management strategy, pages 43 to 60 on your agendas. This item's for decision, so we're asked to provide feedback on proposed changes and approve them, and Kerry will be presenting this. Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, so the report is just to bring to members the risk management strategy. So it last came to committee in January 24. So it's had a review, and its annual review. And we were just really wanting you to accept the small amount of changes that we've incorporated into it. So the risk management strategy its purpose is to identify how the council manages potential risks and opportunities, and it sort of establishes the umbrella of activity that we take across both councils to manage the risk. When we've looked into the risk management strategy, the content was largely still applicable. There was very little that needed changing. There was changes in red, really just to outline what has been amended. We've amended some terminology to align with the GRACE, which is the risk management system that the council uses. So the risk management strategy was using the word gross risk, which is a raw risk before any controls are applied to it, but in the system, it refers to it as an inherent risk. So it's just really to align that so that people working with the strategy and the system are not getting confused by terminology. I think the other thing that we've done is we've sort of aligned the formatting of the document with the clear print guidelines. So, and we've adopted the recent changes to Chorley Council's branding, so a change of font, and to make sure that the document is aligned with all corporate documents and policies. A new risk category has been included this time around. So we've added in the risk for cyber security. So whilst cyber security has been around for quite some time, there's a global risk. Recent years have shown that it's becoming more likely that a local authority or smaller organisations could be impacted by a cyber event. So that's been included. Then risk category is beneficial for reporting to members and to officers. So it's really helpful if we keep reviewing them and making sure that all the types of risk can be reported on. Just to inform members that over the last 12 months, the work that the audit and risk team has really advanced risk management with the quality of the information that is stored within the Grace risk management system. We've been working with services just to make sure that they understand exactly what sort of risk and what level of information they need to be inputting into the system, and how to effectively score the risks within the services. So we've been reporting into the directors and going to their DMT meetings, the management team meetings, just to offer support really and let them ask any questions that they have. And we are seeing quite a substantial improvement in some of the risks that are being managed. I think that's it for the report really, just the content, if anybody's got any questions.
Thanks, Kerry. We'll start with Councillor Clifford, and then I'm sure Councillor Green will be...
No, thank you, Chair. No, I'd just like to say thank you for the training that was put on regarding the risk management strategy. It was very good training, and it was good to see that people have learnt how to actually, just in the almost as an exercise on how to actually score risks and look at the mitigations as well to reduce those risks. Probably just a question just around cybersecurity is a huge risk, and it's increasing all the time, but the new one basically around local government reorganisation as well, that the work around that is being done as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Clifford. Councillor Green.
Thanks so much for the report. So obviously, I've gone through it, and to be honest, it was all eminently sensible. I was really pleased to see the fact you've put the cybersecurity thing in. Just one thing I've got, I'm mindful of cybersecurity against conventional safety and also business risks, is that tend to be that your business risk and your safety risks tend to be pretty reasonably, once you've got the mitigations and sort of stuff in place, they tend to be reasonably stable. You know, they're not changing. My worry about cybersecurity is just across industry full stop, is how adaptable and how cyber crime is and threat actors. I just wonder whether, in terms of a review period, you've got your risks and you've got reviews, but whether your horizon scanning for potential risks that come up from cybersecurity, whether there's something in terms of the frequency, the reviews or the regularity of frequencies that, because it's slightly different than just saying an annual review of safety or business risk. The environment's changing quite a lot on cyber.
I think cyber risk is being continually reviewed. So there is a designated cyber security officer, is that his title? So that's his role he's in the shared services for both councils. And funnily enough, I was just having a conversation with him yesterday. So he's actually tapped into, I suppose, working groups, working party groups that are similar people in his role in other organisations, and they're sharing best practice. Yeah. So they're constantly learning. He did also say that we do have some software that sort of, although it's doing the normal firewall checks, it is sort of built into other people that have the same software. So if one individual organisation has a cyber event, it will flag across the piece. So if there was, like state actors, and they were trying to hit a few organisations. So I think we're learning all the time, and new measures are being put in. What I would say for the risk management side of things, the risks in Grace have to be reviewed 6 monthly, unless they're a red risk. So if we had cyber in there as a red risk, and we didn't have, or there was an obvious increase in threat, or we didn't have the control measures we thought we needed, it would be reviewed on a 3 monthly basis, and that would be being reported to SMT on a regular basis, because then SMT can make the decisions whether or not the level of risk is acceptable or whether further action or, you know, quicker action is needed.
So I'll get that, I was just thinking more underneath this, whether there's somebody constantly looking out for individual, because your risk change quite significantly in a very short space of time, or even overnight. So just whether you've got, as part of your cybersecurity risk management side of things, you've got somebody looking for new threats. I mean, just example of at work the other day, one that's came up was that a vector for infecting systems was plug-in vaping devices. You know, there's evidence of where you know the malicious software has been put into that. People are charging it on their laptops, and it's infecting the system. So those sort of things are constantly coming out. So just rather than just waiting every 3 months just to do a where are we, whether there's somebody just actively on a sort of almost like on a day-to-day basis, and then just making sure those are pulled through. So it's very much unique, I think, in terms of cybersecurity at this moment in time, as opposed to your conventional risk, which, yeah, you would say like a 6-month period or a year period, depending on safety or business risk might be appropriate. So just something like just from my experience, what I'm doing at the moment is just worthy of consideration, I think.
I think Kerry mentioned we do have a dedicated cybersecurity officer. We also have a number of groups outside of SMT, so he sits within the Customer and Digital Directorate, and within their DMTs, they regularly review, you know, the progression of IT works and the consequential risks as a result. We've got a group called the Information Security Council, which is the Director of Customer and Digital, the Cybersecurity Officer, the Head of IT, and myself, and we meet on a regular basis to discuss risks in relation to data, and a lot of that is to do with penetration testing. We have a series of processes in place to do external pen testing, because there's certain standards we have to reach in relation to our cybersecurity levels for GovConnect compliance. So there's a lot of steps that sit behind the strategy, and you know, hopefully we can give you some comfort that we're on with some of the things you've flagged, but it's good to get that kind of feed in.
I'm not doubting in any shape or form that the arrangements you've got in place are appropriate. Just from my experience just recently, because it's a hot topic in the industry I'm in, it's just to be it's constantly, we're pushing constant vigilance all the time with this, because certainly the consequences are quite significant. So yeah.
I mean, part of the assurance is you mentioned the plug-in vapes. The IT kit that's provided to officers, a lot of the charging elements are disconnected. So you know, you can use them as a USB link to a device like a mouse or something, but you can't actually charge from it. And the systems are actually set up, if someone tries, you can identify someone's trying to charge from that, and they can actually negate that device remotely. So we've got a lot of security in place behind, but yeah, I mean, there's always new risks. We have got horizon scanning going on. That's part of Jason's job, to keep us appraised of what those risks are.
Yeah, so I appreciate this report. It's very top level, and like all this sort of stuff, the proof is in the pudding, and all the stuff underneath, and risk owners are identified and managing and reporting, that sort of thing. Just one other area, I just think one of the things I've just found in my experience is just in terms of reporting risks, is that I've had it come back to me on when I've gone up to other councils, and they've said no accident, no risk. And obviously, it's just that's not true. So it's the business about making sure you're capturing near misses, as well, to give you an indication of whether you're creeping towards, an accidental event occurring. Is part of this, and again, it's reading this, I know it's appreciate top level, but have you got something that records near misses that has given you either business or safety or cyber, that's given you an indication of where things are heading towards?
Yeah, we have a dedicated health and safety team, and that's one of their key indicators, looking at near misses, what the reports are, they investigate them, and what action we can take to prevent future accidents occurring. So yeah, they're really hot on near misses at the minute.
Brilliant, oh, that's great. Yeah, thanks. So overall, it made sense. I could read it. And like I said, the training we had the other day was excellent, so thanks very much for that. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Green. Thank you. Councillor Beach.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to echo Councillor Clifford's. It was very well done. I still say it was a risk 16, but we won't split hairs on that. I'd also like to commend the fact that you've made this user-friendly in terms of disability. As a disabled person, it's one of my bugbears that you can't read something because it's not in the correct font. So, you know, I'd like to say, you know, a heartfelt thank you on that. It's just one sort of question I'd like to ask in terms of cybersecurity. Have we had any attacks?
I don't think I can answer that really, because I probably wouldn't have the detail. I know that there's been incidents where we've had phishing emails that have been clicked on, but I've not heard for definite whether we've had any large scale events.
No, we haven't had any large scale events. Interestingly enough, we do run internal phishing email exercises. The biggest challenge we had is to get those emails through the firewall in the first place, so enable the test to actually run, which kind of suggests that the systems are pretty robust. So we actually had to disable or rather bypass the firewall in order for the emails to go out to staff and councillors. You know, and yes, some people did depart from our policies. But we were we do that regularly, so we're able to keep track as to how those how we are performing as an organisation, and it is dropping. I think after the initial phishing exercise we ran, the subsequent ones have been fewer in number where people have gone to click on. So yes, I don't know if that answers the question really, but we've not had. If you were talking about the attacks that some of the larger organisations have had and ransomed for information, no, we haven't had anything like that, or at least nothing that's been successful.
Councillor Green again.
I think it's just, given the nature of the various things, probably reporting in detail in a public forum wouldn't be advisable. I think, you know, in terms of details of stuff like that, you know, again, I think probably is not probably appropriate for a public forum at the moment in time. So so it's a central question which I asked at top level, but in terms of going down into detail, probably not advisable. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, everyone. Well, actually, we got it right in the training. So, what can I say? Any more points to be raised? I mean, it is fairly apparent that there is concern about the cybersecurity, probably more than anything else at the moment in time, with it being new. And I'm just wondering whether it's possible to have a sort of just a fairly regular small report saying this is what's happened, this is what hasn't happened, this is what we found, this is what, and if it's a zero, if it's like Ripper, that's absolutely brilliant because that's what we want. But just to let us know what's happening. Is that possible?
It's possibly worth mentioning as well that the council is currently doing a risk assessment framework, cyber risk assessment framework. So it's been provided by LGA, Local Government Association, and it's a benchmarking tool. I think all districts and unitary councils will be going through the process of looking and saying, you know, where do we sit on this? Are we fit for purpose? Where do we need to improve? So that is something that it's very, very new. We're at the beginning of the process. But over time, we'll probably be able to, well, the IT team, etc., will probably be able to report to yourselves saying what was found, what the learning was, and where the improvements are, and then you'll be able to monitor improvements.
Yeah, I would like to go and speak to my colleague as the Director of Governance, ICT and Customer Services, in part because of, you know, what Councillor Green mentioned before, is I don't want to give you a report that gives so little information that it's worthless, but then at the same time give you information that is potentially putting the council at risk. Because and I know what you're saying about, I'm quite happy to receive a report saying there are no issues, but it might just say very little more than that. And then if it has very little value to it, it could be something that could fall into a wider report as part of that, rather than a standalone bit of information.
Okay, I mean, obviously, I'm not like the President of the United States. I don't make decisions. It would have, my suggestion would have required the committee to agree with it. So we'll carry on as we are then.
We'll definitely try and get
Lovely. Any more questions? Councillor Green.
I think I think what I'd be after is just to say, just a brief saying that we're on it, and again, I know from the business we deal with, probably come under official sensitive classification. So it would make, sharing that over a public forum and even controlling documents might be, it probably was something, if you were to go down that route, you would probably having some legal advice first and come back, maybe come back to the committee then on that point, but so I'm just wary of providing too much in the public domain, which could be used by adversaries, that's all.
Fully appreciate that, Councillor Green. It was more that we actually might not be aware of things that are happening, and as a governance committee, we probably should be. That was all. It wasn't.
Sorry, Chair, can I suggest something? Perhaps that element of the report could be covered in private.
Can I just say, at Lancashire County Council, it would be under the line of being confidential, but we do get a lot more detail. Thanks.
So, this item's for decision, with the slight addition of this report on the cyber security. Are we happy to approve the updated strategy? All those in favour? Proposers. I thought I could propose it, but I can't. A proposer then, Councillor Clifford. Thank you. Thank you, members. That is approved. Item 8, contract procedure rules waivers, pages 63 to 68 in your papers. This item is for feedback and noting, and Taz is going to present this.
Thank you, Chair. So the report provides a summary, members, of the number of waivers of the contract procedure rules of the last 6 months. Members will recall that at the Governance Committee on the 27th of November, the Interim Auditor's Annual Report for the year ended 31st of March 2024 was presented, and it was identified that an area for improvement and recommendation was that waivers of the contract procedure rules be reported to Governance Committee on biannually to enhance transparency and oversight. So this is the first report, obviously in terms of those recommendations that were outlined. So in terms of the actual waivers, at paragraph 7, you'll just note that I've provided details of what a waiver is. So it's a waiver of the actual option of an open procurement or the use of a framework, and instead obviously directly awarding that contract to a specific supplier. And the contract procedure rules allow the waivers for a number of reasons, and those are outlined at paragraph 7. And normally it's in circumstances where there is an urgency requirement, or there are general exceptional circumstances, or that the market has been tested and it's been identified that it's such a niche area that there's only one supplier available to provide that work or service. So you will note that at paragraph 9 there's a table which provides details of the number of waivers granted per month, the department who has obviously been granted that waiver, some description to give you a bit of detail, and the value of the contract that was awarded. I will say that obviously there is quite a robust, comprehensive procedure in place to award waivers for those contracts, and there is a process to follow. So initially there is obviously the directorate that has to approve that. It then follows on to approval by the statutory officers, including the chief exec. And you will recall that as part of the contract procedure rules, which were approved in February, there is now going to be a requirement for approval from the executive member. So that's an additional aspect which was included as part of the contract procedure rules. In terms of the actual waivers themselves, there were 15 in the last 6 months, and that equates to about 2.5 per month. We don't feel that that's excessive, and obviously there is a transparent approach in place there. The report is just for feedback and noting. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Taz. Any questions for Taz? Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Taz. Just some observations, really. Some of the waivers at property services, say, for September and, sorry. Not the December one. But it was down to not being able to fulfil the work. There was a backlog of work that had to be fulfilled. Is that picked up in identifying why the backlog occurred and to make sure that the reason for it requires an improvement in either the processes that they use or the staff that they require, you know, that the forecasting's not right? Or
So in answer to your questions, there have been significant changes in the actual teams themselves. So there's people that have retired, and recruitment has been a real issue for those teams, and that's why there's been a backlog of work identified there. And obviously, as part of those process to get people in to obviously cover that backlog of work, we've had to obviously use a waiver process. I think the team itself is now at partly sort of capacity, but obviously there is that requirement to obviously fulfil some of that backlog of work. So I think the head of property is obviously considering that element in terms of ensuring that process in place, but we can't sort of control elements around retirement and when we have issues around actually recruiting those individuals to cover those jobs that are vacant.
appreciate that. It was just wanted to make sure that that the issues were looked at in the round and not just recorded as a waiver. I think the other one as well was the Christmas workshop. Was that just because of shortage of time?
I think it's fair to say that the team obviously had a number of events ongoing during that year. But yes, I appreciate, and obviously that's something to take away in terms of planning. So yes, perhaps there could have been some better planning in place.
Thanks for that.
Well, now you've stolen Councillor Clifford and my thunder from our briefing. we did actually raise the question whether Christmas arrived as a surprise. But, Councillor Beach.
I take it the waivers that once we've waived it once, we're not likely to re-waive it, are we? Just in terms of following on from Councillor Haywood's about the estates consultant, and it's 6 months to cover the backlog of in the service. Are we likely to extend that waiver or renew that waiver?
Yeah, I'll take this one because Taz is reporting on the waiver processes and doesn't get involved in some of the requests. So the process for the waivers, just to be clear, is that it's a request to depart from the contract procedure rules, as Taz has outlined the reasons why. And there's an approvals process that goes through the director of the relevant directorate to say, yes, this is necessary. And then it goes through the procurement team and it goes through the statutory officers, which is myself as monitoring officer, the section 151 officer and the chief exec. And we all have to be satisfied that this waiver is justified. Now, do you get repeat waivers? Yes, you sometimes do. And now to pick up your point about the temporary staffing, if you get a member of an agency worker who is good and is delivering, and then the need is still there, you look to retain that agency worker because it takes a period of time for them to learn the organisation. It's not ideal because there is a cost to it, but as Taz has mentioned, there are some recruitment challenges in some areas. We've worked very hard with the new recruitment system, which the new award-winning recruitment system, I'll just get that in, to try and expand the catchment for some of these recruitments, and we've had success in that regard, and actually the spend on agency staff is coming down significantly, but if there is a need, then it can happen again. And similarly, with where there is a niche requirement, and you'll find that in particular with things like software, where we're looking to, as part of our strategy in relation to software, rationalise the different systems that are on council servers so that we enhance our knowledge base in relation to them and can support them locally, then yes, you may find there's another wave coming in relation to that contract, because there are no other, that is the only system you can get that meets that need and fits into the strategy. So you can get repeat waivers, and I think it's important to recognise that, but it would have to be justified on each occasion.
Thanks, Chris. Any more questions, any more observations? No? Oh, thanks very much, Taz. That item was just for noting, so we'll move on to the next item. Item 9, Local Code of Corporate Governance, pages 69 to 88 in your papers. This item's for decision. The committee's asked to approve the updated document, and Chris Moyster will present this.
Thank you, Chair. Brace yourselves. Right, okay. So members who've been on the committee before will probably recognise this document. There is no statutory requirement to have a local code of corporate governance, but SIPFA, in their delivery of good governance in local government, recommend that a local code be adopted as best practice. So the council chose many years ago, and it is many years ago because it predated the last revision of that guidance document in 2016 to adopt a local code. So what's the purpose of the code? Well, it's broken down into two parts, and members will see that from pages 71 of the agenda onwards. So there is an introductory text which sets out what the purpose of the local code is. So as I've mentioned, it's based on the Delivering Good Governance in Local Government framework set out by SIPFA Solis. That is due for renewal. We know that that is taking place. It's likely to change. Probably not significantly because the principles are actually sound. So the document defines what the definition of corporate governance is to this council. So effectively it is how we do the right things for the right people in the right way at the right time, and in a clear, transparent, ethical, and acting with integrity in a way that will lead in the communities. So that's effectively what we have defined as good governance. So there's two elements to the right things that we do. Firstly, there is our statutory obligations. As a statutory body, we have certain functions we have to deliver. And the second is the council's corporate strategy, which sets out the vision and priorities for the organisation. And everything that the council does should feed into one of our statutory obligations or into the corporate strategy and what those priorities to enable us to demonstrate value for money. So the framework for the local code is set out as against the 7 principles, and those are detailed at section 5 of the initial part of the report, and they're at page 73 on your agenda. So those principles are that we behave with integrity and demonstrate a strong commitment to ethical values. We ensure that there's openness and stakeholder engagement. We define the outcomes of the council in terms of sustainable economic, social and environmental benefits. And for those who are particular local government nerds, those are the priorities as set out by the Local Government Act, and there are general powers of competence. It's determining the interventions necessary to optimise the achievement of those intended outcomes, so those are our priorities. It's about our capacity, which you've had some discussion on earlier in relation to the delivery of some of the works of the council, but that's not just resourcing capacity, it's also the ability to actually lead the organisation, and that's not just officers, that is councillors as well. It's about managing the risks and the performance through our robust internal controls and strong financial management, and then finally it's about implementing good practice in transparency, both in terms of reporting and audit. So those are the principles, and I think there's quite a helpful diagram on page 74 which shows how those principles relate to each other and interact, and effectively you cannot operate a strong governance environment without all of those principles working in tandem. The diagram at page 75, which is the last part of the initial part of the document, just groups together some of the plans and demonstrates how frequently these are reviewed. I've got to admit I overlooked just tweaking that a little bit, so this will be amended slightly to the published version. to reflect some of the decisions that have been taken by this committee recently, including how frequently some of these documents are actually reviewed and checked. And as Dawn pointed out to me with a sharp stick, I need to get her job title right as well. So the meaty part of the document is the table that starts at page 77. It's also the hardest bit to read, and I do apologise for that. But I say it's the meaty part because it actually demonstrates the evidence that we have to meet those principles that were outlined before. And the way that the framework, the document from SIPFA sets things out is that they give us the principle, and then they provide a series of statements that we can aspire to or meet to demonstrate how we can evidence that we deliver those principles. And we include in there a list of the policies, processes, individuals and meetings that help them evidence that these principles are actually being met. So there is a part of that is referenced in each section of the principles. There's a separate section for each principle. The evidence section is intentionally high level. So, and that is to avoid us changing a policy name, not necessarily the content even on occasion, just call it something else, but leave reference to the old document in there. So you'll see that some of the policy families are grouped together under a heading, and then we can point to those as the policies that we are complying with or the processes we are complying with. This is an important document. It is a document that we will be assessed against, both by external audit and by internal audit as part of their assessment of our governance framework and our statement of internal controls. But it's also important for the public because it is a document, I think, that helps them understand how the council operate and how they can take assurance, in addition to you as members of the governance committee or councillors, can take assurance for how the council operates. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thanks, Chris. Councillor Clifford.
Thank you, Chair. As Chris has said, it is a very important document. And with that, I'd just like it to just be recorded. Thank you for the training session prior to this meeting, because it gives us the opportunity to go through it in more detail. So obviously, in a meeting, sometimes people don't realise that we've had training sessions on these. So I'd just like to put that on record. Thank you. Even the meaty part is, I actually find it very easy to read. So, no, but thank you for the work on this.
Thank you, Councillor Clifford. Councillor Beach.
So on the meaty part of the document on page 77, in the evidence you've got staff induction, but you've not got member induction. And I've just wondered, is there a reason why you've not got members induction in that?
Very good point, and I can add it in. Thank you.
Top marks. Councillor Green.
I'd like to echo what Mark said as well, and also on what you said, Chris, in terms of, I find it, looking at that, you clearly sees how much the council's done and how much they've got in place. But more importantly, I think, rather than just to us, is actually to the public, so they actually realise how much processes and arrangements have got in place to, you know, to keep the ship afloat, really. So I think it's really important. And the fact you've put all that stuff down is, again, it's just the fact that Michelle's just pointed something out. Again, by documenting in such a way, it makes it easier to maybe spot these things. So yeah, so I think it's you say it's a meaty bit, but I think it's really quite clear and quite useful. So yeah, well done.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Well, ticks all round. But I'm serious, on behalf of the committee, I would like to thank you for all the work you've done on it, because it can't be easy or enjoyable. And we shall now wait for Dawn to implement it and report back. Are there any more points, questions, observations to raise? No. Okay, this item's for decision. So can I move to vote on endorsing the updated local code of corporate governance? A proposer, please. Councillor Beach. Councillor Clifford. All those in favour? Item 10 is a constitution review, which is a verbal update from Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you to all who attended the working group where we reviewed the initial draft of the proposed new constitution. It was a really helpful meeting from my point of view, and it was good to see there was support for particularly the presentational changes, which I think everyone felt made it a much more simple document to follow. And I think what's quite pleasing is that that's been universally echoed, particularly by councillors who are less experienced and have found the existing constitution a bit of a trial to try and get through. There are some queries raised around the executive functions and the proposed changes to those, but I think it's fair to say there was broad support for that, or at least a willingness to give them a go and see what happens, providing there are the necessary checks and balances in and that those can be demonstrated. I've not brought the updated draft back to committee at this time. I'm still, because one of the drivers of this is trying to align as much as possible the constitutions between Chorley and South Ribble, so that there is a consistency where there can be, but both councils retain their own sovereignty and corporate identity. There are more things to do with the South Ribble ones that could have an impact with the Chorley constitution. Nothing that would make significant changes, I don't think, but just to make sure that where we're proposing something in one, it's adopted in both before I bring it back. There are some suggested changes to two of the council committees. Well, at the moment I'm clear on what they are for planning committee, and they're being addressed with the chair of planning and vice chair of planning, as well as the planning service and the executive, and they'll be presented to members in due course. And there may be some proposed changes in relation to licensing as well, but I'm just working through those with the licensing team at the moment. So that's why you haven't got an updated draft at the moment. If there are any changes will be reported through the Chair of Governance. If there are any things a bit more significant, I will make sure it's shared wider, but it will be going to go to full council in May, so that there will be for approval. At that point, it is a council decision, so if there are any things that still remain outstanding in your own mind, you can raise them at that point. But I would encourage you basically to suck them and see with any changes you're not sure about. There's nothing in it that is a real significant change for this authority other than the presentation of the document. Most of the content has remained pretty consistent. It's just how we've ordered it and presented it. So that's just a quick update, Chair.
Any questions, observations, comments, Chris? I'll wait with bated breath for the planning committee alterations, but we shall see. No further questions. We'll move on to item 11, which is the RIPA application update. We're all waiting with bated breath once again, but he's going to disappoint us.
Well, I can't, unfortunately. No, we haven't made any RIPA applications since the last meeting, or ever, as far as I can really remember. But just by way of an update, we are reviewing the Enviro Crime Enforcement Policy. Now, the approach of the council has always been prevention rather than prosecution in relation to crime. So, because what you tend to find with prosecution, it just moves it on, whereas education and prevention tends to prevent it happening in the first place. There are still some areas, however, where it is continuing. So we are reviewing whether we need to move into the prosecution area, at which point we would potentially be using RIPA, particularly in relation to the use of CCTV. So that is currently being reviewed at the moment. And if it is the case that we decide to go down that route, then you may find that we will get some RIPA authorisations, and my colleague to my left will be reporting on them if we do.
Thanks, Chris. I think we should invite you back to present one, actually.
Do you know what? I'd come just because.
Right, that item was for noting. No further questions for Chris? Thanks, Chris. Item 12, any urgent business previously agreed with the chair? We haven't any. And just before we wind up, as members will be aware, our Director of Governance, Chris, will soon be leaving the Council, and this will be his last Governance Committee meeting. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank Chris for his support and guidance to the committee and all members in his role as monitoring officer over many years at Chorley, and wish him well in his new role. And I'd like to add my personal thanks for all the help you've given me. Thanks, Chris. Thank you. And finally, just before we finish, we look forward to meeting Craig at the next meeting in person as a full member. I'm not sure of his stature there. So that concludes the meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday.